Hi everyone, welcome back to Ninetail Hobbies. Today I have something a little bit different. We are doing an interview with Anthony Mallett, creator of, Trader's Galaxy, which I was going to say Bot Wars originally, but you've expanded. You've got a couple other games that you're throwing out and everything. So, tell everybody a quick, pitch on yourself.
Hi, I'm Anthony. I am the owner of Trader's Galaxy miniatures and games, and I'm the creator of Bot War miniature game, which is like the flagship game for Trader's Galaxy. We also have some other games that are based on that universe, and like Broken Skies and Rise of Democracy. And I also do other miniatures as well that aren't based in that universe. So that's pretty much it.
Yeah, you recently had the new apes come out. I saw on your latest video.
Yeah. So I actually started. That's the second version of the Space Chimps, and it's sort of a bit more of a nostalgia thing for me to redo them again. So I quite like how they turned out, to be fair. But they don't really. I don't know what game they would fit into. I don't have a game for them. I do have one sort of half written, but it'll probably, it's not such a slow grow that a snail could outrun it.
Yeah, Space Station Zero is what pops into my brain for those that.
Okay,
yeah. But I want to kind of cover some things that I haven't seen in other interviews. Ontabletop did that interview with you a while ago, and you talked a lot about your company and everything like that, which I'll link that down below in the description. But I'd kind of like to talk to you more about the minis and the mechanics and kind of the game aspect of the whole thing. So what was your ideas or concept for the game to start off with? I mean, obviously there's a giant nostalgia kick for the flavor of the game, but what did you look at? Did you kind of look at the game as there's a niche that hasn't been filled, or was it just kind of one of those like, aha, like I want to make this game kind of deal?
Yeah. So it's sort of a bit weird how it sort of started, because I'd been looking at like Games Workshop stuff and how that company started and all that sort of stuff. And at the same time, I was watching a lot of like old cartoon, like Saturday morning cartoons, and it's just somehow happened. And it's hard to like pull out all the threads of how it happened, because it was like several threads that sort of intersected for it to come about. So I'll just probably just try and go through each of those threads.
Sure.
So I'd gone to uni, and I think this is covered in the other interview, so I won't go into it much. And I was doing my Masters of Business, which had an entrepreneurial slant. So there was that part.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things in that was like, do what you know. So new miniatures. So there's then that part. And then there was like this drive for me. I started picking up my old comic books and having a look through them, and I ended up getting a DVD box set of the old season Transformers cartoons and stuff like that. And then so that was happening in sort of just in my entertainment view life.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually had started Trader's Galaxy as a way of like connecting it to my uni to do that. So I was just like, well, what am I going to make? And I originally was looking at the Games Workshop. Well, how did Games Workshop start? And I was actually studying that at uni. How did they start? And they started off with Lord of the Rings, Judge Dredd, and all this sort of stuff. So they started off with these things that they knew. I went to the next stage, what Games Workshop did, and pretty much pivot all that stuff into my own game of Bot War. So, and then just loads of other stuff. Once that happened, it was actually really, it sort of was difficult to happen at start, and then it actually happened a lot easier. And as stuff started to get its own personality and other stuff came in to it, like different inspirations and things like that, it started to really go quite well.
Yeah.
And then And then as it goes, I just wanted to move further and further away from the original inspirations, much like following the path that Games Workshop has done. Now they have their own thing, but you can still see that those, if you look hard enough, you can still see those influences that they had like back in the early days. And that's sort of where I want to get to, is that point where I've got my complete own stuff, full own background, full characters, everything. But you can still sort of see that nod to those inspirations.
Right.
So I'm trying to follow Games Workshop's like 40-year model.
Yeah.
in less than 10 years.
That is one thing though, as like a flavor person, you know, someone that loves the lore, in pretty much anything I read, that's one thing that's really impressed me, like as kind of short span that your game has had so far, like the lore that you have put in this, like what you've written and everything, is really impressive. And then was it last summer where you had the community kind of like feed the storyline with the campaign?
Yeah, I tried to actually get as much input from the community for the story as I can, and the community have come up with some fantastic ideas like that I've implemented. I actually implemented a lot of community ideas. So I'm a big believer in like having, like if you're doing something, you can have like an opinion on something, but everybody's like, or you can have a direction that you need to go, but with everybody else's feedback, you're polishing that idea as it goes along. And when it comes out, it's way better than the original one. So, but yeah, like the community have had some great ideas that have been implemented. The background, Steve Remington, he's a friend of mine. He does sort of, his hobby is writing and stuff. So he's actually helped as well a lot with just writing his little short stories and stuff like that, which I really enjoy. Just sort of bringing like the characters right down to like the real up close and personal level. So I can write the narrative, which is sort of way up there, but he's like brings it right down to like how their personalities are on screen as such, you know?
Yeah.
So,
and it's handled really well, because I've read, you know, I've got a couple of the faction books, and the short stories and everything are real fun, because even if it's just a paragraph of some characters interacting, like there's obvious, you know, character depth in these, which is always cool to have with your, you know, your figs that you're playing on the table, because then you can be like, well, this guy might not be the best stats, but he's my favorite character because of whatever.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And I really want that. Like I've always been like someone that has liked, I love tournament play, but I love tournament play flavored with a narrative style. So whenever I used to make armies for other games and tournaments, I always had like a real strong flavor to the forces that I would take. I'd get beaten a lot, but it was still fun to me. And so that's sort of really what I want to try and get across in Bot War in particular, is just have that real strong flavor, like really themed armies, limiting yourself to a specific theme because of these characters and et cetera, et cetera. So I really do like that aspect. It's actually one of the most rewarding aspects as well, I think.
Yeah, and because Red Cannoneers came out a month ago, and then Green Spectres just dropped a few days ago and everything. And
yeah. And actually that's exactly what I mean. That's sort of really where the rubber hits the road, is that the Valiants as a whole, I felt, had lost a lot of their flavor, because there was sort of like, there was 60 plus characters in the faction. You could make, you know, a few different forces out of them, but really you kept gravitating back to not necessarily the character of the force, but what was the strongest army that you could make with characters. And so what I wanted to do is actually just, and White Knights sort of was a preview of this, is it has a limited number of characters, and you've got to take the good with the bad, essentially.
Yeah.
But overall, as a team, they actually work quite well together. So, and there's a real strong theme for each one. So Red Cannoneers, I actually got them on the table here at the moment, but they're really strong at short range shooting. They're probably one of the best beginners forces to collect, just because there's no like super. You don't have to be super clever to play in a certain way, like move and shoot. They do that well. You still have to. I mean, you still got to be careful, but they're just easy in that regard. Where Screen Spectres are probably a much more powerful force than Red Cannoneers, but you need a lot more brain power.
Yeah, they've got a large learning curve on them.
Yeah, so it's like they're more about movement and manipulating strategy rating to get advantages in the game. So they could probably run rings around the Red Cannoneers if you've got someone who's like that way inclined to play them. But I'm not that way inclined.
That sounds right up my alley.
Yeah, just people that think a certain way. Like, they can think. I don't know how it works, but my brain doesn't work like that. Aiden, a few games I've played against Aiden, his brain works a bit like that. He can think out stuff in advance. Oh, I'll need to move this and all that sort of stuff. So he would probably be quite good at Green Spectres as well. So knowing who can do what when and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, I think they'll. And to me, it's also a continuation of the development of Bot War and the factions that it seemed natural that the Valiants do split into battle groups because it's unique to Bot War,
Yeah, I noticed that with like a Chrome Chargers group, like they had that starter pack or expansion because they kind of had their flavor, like they're got their own headquarters over in this corner away from everybody else. And it's neat, like you said, where Valiants were just like, they're the good guys. They're the, good giant robots or whatever. But I like that there's sub-factions inside them. It just makes them more interesting.
Yeah, I think so. And especially for those narrative battles as well, like self-limiting forces based on their geographic location and things like that, I think is important for that narrative play. Like, you don't always necessarily have to have like the best force taken every time to a battle. So yeah, that's something that I feel quite strongly about, and I want to continue. And same thing with Democracy is that I recently split Democracy into two as well, because I didn't feel that the two forces really. I mean, they connected, I guess, on the battlefield, but they were the strongest force in the game. The both of them together.
Yeah.
By splitting them, I felt like Special Branch became more of a sort of elite,
right,
sort of unit that could go in, whereas the Democracy was more of like the blunt weapon. It's just like just numbers and lots of tanks.
Yeah.
Whereas I think with most Democracy armies, you would see mostly Special Branch with a few tanks thrown in. Whereas I wanted it to be like, here's your row of tanks and military equipment versus these giant robots or whatever, and rather than have the mix like that.
Yeah, and you'd kind of done that originally, I guess, with the Deceivers, because they've got the Infestors and everything, which kind of feel like a subgroup of them, which Infestors, thumbs up, aesthetically, best group you've got. I don't know how they play on the tabletop, but yeah. But that kind of feat.
The Infestors are sort of, right from the very start, the Infestors have actually been their own faction. Electro Tyrant's drone army split off.
That's right, yeah.
So he split off. There probably will be some more Deceiver splits. So I would love to do, like, this is way like long term. But I would love to do a themed faction for each of the 7 sins. So, like, you've got Ravenous with Gluttony. We'll do a bunch of stuff around, because each of those is a lord of his own group, right? So, so yeah, I think that would be fun to theme robots in those sort of ways. So, but yeah, like the Infestors sort of are one of those factions that I started, and they're not really where I exactly want them yet. How they play and things like that.
They just haven't jived mechanically with what you're hoping for.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I think, well, yeah, and aesthetically slightly. Like, to me, they don't look corrupted enough. Because if I think that goes back to in the early days, the background wasn't as fleshed out, so the background struggled to drive the design. So design was sort of driving itself, and then background was playing catch up. Now it's the actual opposite. Background is driving the design, which is much better. Like it's so much better. You can go, oh, we want to do this. Oh, but in the background, this is how this is.
Yeah.
And so it actually gives you a better picture of what they're like. And I really want the Infestors to look like they're evil bots that have gone over the edge.
Yeah. But you saying all that kind of, I wanted to ask you, what is kind of the driving force behind your designs? Like, do you have a particular feel that you go for? But, you know, like you said, you're wanting now the narrative to kind of drive the design of the characters. But can you talk a little bit about your process of yes, this, no, that? Like, do you draw up a concept? Do you have a modeler come in? Or are you modeling yourself? Like, what's your whole process on that?
Yeah, so that's quite a big question.
It is. I'm sorry. I threw a whole building at you.
No, that's okay. That's okay. I don't think anyone's ever asked me that before, to be honest. So that's sort of a first. So, there's two ways. There's two ways that I do it, and once upon a time, like the old way, I'll explain the old way first, and I don't do it like that anymore. I now do it mostly the new way. So the old way was I would go through the internet. I just have an idea. I want to make this type of bot or this type of vehicle or whatever. I'd go through the internet and collect a bunch of images from all over the internet about different things, whether it be real life or cartoons or whatever. Something I'd seen before or whatever. I'd try and find all those images. I'd then do a brief for my artist. So I do have an artist that works for me, and I would say, okay, I want something a bit like this, and it's got to be a bit like this, and a bit like this, and this a bit like this, and then he'd come up with maybe like 3 or 4 options, and I'd say, oh no, I don't want that. I do want these arms and that head, and we sort of work it out like that. So. But the first part of that now is all changed. Now it starts off with the background. It's like I'll be writing something on the background, and it'd be like, this happened or that happened. Like for instance, I'll be writing something. It could even be what's missing. Like I'll be writing something about Infestors, and like, you know what? What's really missing here is some sort of mid-level character, and so it'll start like that, and then it'll be like. And this is mostly in my head, just going around and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if you had like a giant antlion or something like that? Like keep with the insect theme, but like take it further and further into the corrupted realm of chaos.
Right.
You know? So yeah, so a lot of stuff are also mashups as well. So when I'm trying to think of like, if I make word association, so if I'm talking about Infestors and corruption, I'm immediately looking at sort of demonic stuff and chaos from 40K, that sort of stuff. How does that all amalgamate into my main theme of robots? And so that's sort of how it works now. Like, and I rather than do mood boards of images pre-existing, I'll actually do more of a written brief.
Yeah.
And based on the background and what the character, like I'll tell the artist, like, this is what their personality is for these characters. And he'll come up with, and the good thing about that is I get some radically different images. Like the 3 images things is still the same, but they can be completely different. Like the artist has had this idea and it's completely out there, and then he's got this idea which is more traditional, and then he's to what Bot War normally is, and then he's got, you know, a third idea about something as well. So it's been quite interesting, and I find myself lately tending towards more radical side of stuff because it's more unique.
Right.
Whereas before I was a bit sort of like, oh, I don't know whether it's going to fit. But yeah, now I'm sort of tending towards more radical ideas.
That's awesome. I mean, because yeah. But no, that's great that, you know, your game has grown enough and you're comfortable enough that you're just like willing to take those risks. Cause I think that's where true visual creativity can kind of come from.
It's actually really exciting. It's like, to me, it's more exciting, like, than any, like, that's, to me, that's the most exciting part of just watching the community react to something that's a bit more radical is actually quite engaging for me.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, some people might not like stuff, but that doesn't particularly matter. Like, it's, you know, I like the idea of that sort of stuff.
There's always going to be that handful of people that are just like, no, you're breaking away from your established, you know, whatever. Well,
I've already done that. Really, it's actually amazing how that side of things has changed so much. Like, initially there was a lot of people, they didn't, you know, it's fair enough to them. I don't blame anyone for that, but they weren't really into Bot War. They were into the inspirations of Bot War. So I understand that when it became not those inspirations anymore, people would just like move away. They like what they like.
Yeah.
But for me, I would much rather fewer people like Bot War than a lot of people like, you know, the inspirations Bot War, because it's not really liking what I'm doing.
Yeah. Oh, and that's one thing I wanted to move into is your system. That's another thing that drew me in because I have a pretty limited amount of time. You know, if I'm going to, and resources, and if I'm going to invest my time and resources into something, I want to be something I can really sink my teeth into. And not only are the models, which if anybody hasn't ordered any of your stuff, your resin is crisp. Like, I was really impressed by the models that came in. Like, mold lines were super minimal. Like, cleanup was awesome. They stuck together great. And for me, that's a huge thing. Because, you know, where I'm a painter and everything. But also your game, like, at its core, it is super simple. Like, the move, shoot mechanics, you've got an energy pool that informs what you can do. But it's also incredibly robust with the really handful of special abilities and mechanics and everything. It really makes everybody kind of feel unique. What kind of inspired or what did you derive from to build this system?
Well, the system came, well, not the system as such, but the genesis of that system actually came from a former friend of mine. He had a system which was actually not very, like, he had the very basic core down, but he had like 5 dice types, but he had the core down of like paying the energy for certain things. So when we stopped doing that game and like we sort of kiboshed the whole project, etc., I had been play testing that game with Aiden for 6 months or more, and we made a lot of changes to it. We cut down the dice to just 3 types of dice. We streamlined like a lot of the stuff. We sorted out all the upgrades and just worked on all the and add super abilities and things like that. So when by the time it came around to actually writing Bot War, it was actually reasonably easy to get the first edition written because it was just incorporating all the notes and made like some of them are pretty major changes. Like I think the first game was pretty much unplayable, but yeah, just incorporating all that into the first edition. And then once first edition started, then you get the feedback from the public and stuff and tweak things and change things and work through the balancing of the stuff and how the things work. But now that we're pretty confident with the system, and surprised at how I'm still surprised at how robust it is as well. And like there's almost nothing I can't do with that system now.
Yeah.
As long as like the very core of it stays the same. Like we've got 4 types of energy coming. There's going to be different energy that can do different things. There's going to be it's pretty fantastic actually. So
that's exciting.
I like it, there's 1 or 2 things that I worry about the system. Is one that it is actually so simple that I think a lot of people might get bored with it in a way. Like it's like that worries me is that if they're not challenged, like if they're not like challenging it, like challenging in a sort of, I guess, in a more tournament-y situation, they're not really discovering all the nuances in it. So, yeah, as you say, it's like essentially just sort of move, shoot, fight. But how you do those 3 things, there's like an infinite of ways to be able to do that. And so it's really, I worry that if someone's just like, oh, we're going to play a game, instead of game, move, shoot, fight, and they go, oh, yeah, that, and just using the dice to determine the outcomes, then what you have is just a random game, really.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to do that, you might as well play anything. But, you know, I was teaching my buddy this past weekend, and he was playing Valiance, and I was playing Coil, and they have drastically different play styles. Like the beginning Valiance, you can kind of just, you know, trump your way up to a certain extent. And Coil, you got to be like sneaky. You know, I would hide behind a building and I would make him use one of his actions to have to move so he could even attack me.
Sort of stuff. Yeah. And that's the thing that I think is great and possible concern about the system is that you've got to play it. Like you've got to actually play it as if you and think about it. It's not like a game. Sometimes some games you sort of walk up. Oh, just the more dice you can throw at something, the more you're gonna win, right?
Mm-hmm.
The whole object of the game is putting as many dice in your hand as you can. And so Botwar's not like that. And I think if you really want to play it, there's so many devastating combos and stuff that you can discover that can catch people completely off guard. But just that thing you said about you've got to make your opponent spend one of his activations to get to you to reduce the amount of shots that he can get and all that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Those sort of thinking things is how you win the game. And that's why it's actually really easy to learn. You'll learn it in a turn. And I guess it's cliche that you say it's really difficult to master though, but because to win every time, you need to be thinking like that. Like, oh, how do I punish my opponent as much as possible to do the things he wants to do? And that could even mean just like doing a couple of chip damages on someone for them to try and get them to spend their energy so they have less to do in their turn.
Yeah.
You know, it could be like that. And so, and watching, and that's why the cards are on, because you can see, oh, that person's got like 10 cubes stacked on that card. He's going to do something.
Mm-hmm.
But then you can also fake someone out and do that. It's like, oh, he's going to do, really the real attack's coming from somewhere else. So you know, there's a lot of mind in the game if people care to put it in.
Yeah, I mean, not to harp on it, this is the last thing I'll pull up, but also in that game, very first turn, my buddy jumps Supercharged, teleports him into the back lines right on top of Shogun, and completely messes up like this flank plan I had because I had to sit back there and deal with him. And he was just, dice play a certain part of it. I just couldn't get rid of him,
Yeah. So and you're spending your energy against for shield boosts and things like that, which you would normally be spending on your attack in your activations. And so you're like, oh, well now, and then do you go ahead with half your attack and it's probably not going to be as good? Or do you pull everybody back for a turn and try and deal with this one character? Yeah, that's the sort of stuff I love. That in Bot War, if you play it to its full, you've got so many decisions you have to make. I feel exhausted sometimes, just sort of the amount of decisions you have to make. Well, whether you do this or whether you do that.
Well, and that also speaks to it because you don't have a large model count. You're not sitting there with, 100 models that you had to sit there and slog through and paint and everything, and then move this whole group. It's this interesting, interactive, like constantly back and forth, but the strategy rating is super cool because it'll be, well, I have 3 guys that go, and then you have 1, and I have 1, and then you have 2, and I
made the rookie mistake of pummeling up beside someone with a lower strategy rating than me. Like, it was just so stupid. This is like, here you go, and that person had a giant hammer and just come and whacked me, basically. Yeah. Like whack-a-mole. And I can't believe that I just made that mistake because I didn't think about the opponent's strategy rating when I'm moving my characters around. It's like, is that person going to go next or whatever? And not even to mention that someone with special rule strategist or whatever can throw a complete spanner in the works and mess that up anyway. Like if they've got that.
Yeah. So what's your favorite mechanic, like personally, that you've made, and also like do you have a favorite model that you just want to play with all the time?
Mechanic wise, I probably would say the energy system, because the game can be won and lost in the energy side of things.
Absolutely.
Because there's so many, like I would say that energy's been the number one thing that has caused me to lose games and the number one thing that's caused me to win games if someone else has had a problem with energy and things like that. And there's probably more decisions about energy in the game than anything else. Like, if you've got 2 damage left on a character, do you put a lot of energy on them? Because you need them to do a thing. But what if they die and you lose all the energy? Like, these are the decisions. That's probably my favorite. But a close second would be the strategy. And I think a lot of the game is, made and lost in the strategy and energy phases. Oh, favorite model? That's a very good question. I don't.
No super special, baby.
Yeah, I don't really have. I'm just trying to think now. Sorry for turning around. I'm just trying to think. I don't really have a favorite.
Yeah, because you've got I was surprised when I really started looking into the game, like the breadth of models that you have available for each different faction and everything.
300, I think.
That's awesome and kind of nutty.
Yeah, it is. It is kind of nutty. Yeah, it is a bit crazy. Like, there must be a reason that games like Bot War, like other games like Bot War, don't have so many models. It probably is because it is quite a lot to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah, having a lot of lines, I realized, is a problem for businesses. Having a lot of product lines. But it's not too bad when you bundle stuff. But yeah, it's I like the range. The range really probably won't. Well, actually, I say that we're supposed to be doing Red Star Nations.
Super excited.
This year, and then next year I'll probably go into next year. So I've had some feedback on releasing too many things. So probably next year will be Immolators.
Immolators.
Flame guys with the combiner volcano.
Nice. That was one thing I was going to ask you, like future factions, anything that you want to talk about? Because I know you teased some stuff on the Discord with some lion.
Oh yeah. Well, I'm very concerned about. It's been brought to my attention that I'm teasing too much stuff. So I am a bit concerned about it, but I think everybody already knows that the Valiants. There's 4. 5 if you include White Knights. So there's 4 battle groups, and the battle, even though you'll still be able to use all the Valiants as their own thing. Like the stat cards aren't changing really. I have updated the design of the stat cards in the faction guides, but the actual stats are all identical. So you can still use the turbo cards and all that sort of stuff, and you can still mix the Valiants up if you want to, and all that sort of stuff. But
you just don't get the special rules.
Official tournament stuff. Only the battle groups will be official in that sense.
Okay.
But the battle groups are going to be 4. So we've already got Red Canadians and Grim Spectres, and then there'll be Golden Lions, which will be like the priestly class of the Valiants, and so a lot of like Paladins, like that sort of type of character. And then there'll be the Blue Speedsters, which is just a working title at the moment. I don't quite know what they'll be called, but Blue Speedsters, and that will be Dukel's sort of own battle group.
Cool.
So that's the Valiants. Hopefully, I'm not sure whether they'll be all out this year. Certainly Golden Lions will, but Blue Speedsters might be next year. And then Atlantic's getting a small update in the faction guide, which will be out this year, but it's not really a huge deal. Most of the existing models, all of the existing models will still be viable. And just trying to think, Red Star Nations will be the big one for the year.
Nice.
So that will be the Dinoborgs returning.
Everybody loves some robotic dinosaurs.
Yeah, I've got to get, I'm probably falling a little bit behind on that. All the sculpting's done, all the art's done. I just haven't designed all the stat cards yet and done some other artwork for it. So I need to get stuck into that probably next month, because it's supposed to be pre-order 1st of May. But yeah, and then Immolators, I've done nearly all the concepts for them. We haven't started sculpting them yet. They are the 3rd elemental group. So we've got of the elementals, we've got Leviathan. Atlantic is sort of an elemental group, sort of, and that'll probably come out more in their guide a little bit. And then but it's a weird one because they sort of are also a normal bot war group, so elementals and bot war. Yeah, and where was up to Atlantica, and then Darkstones is one of the elemental groups as well, and then Volcano, which is the fire elemental, that's the Immolators. Yeah, they'll probably be the major release for next year. And there's very few actually humanoid bots in that. They're mostly dragon bots. Nice. Yeah, so all the different types of dragons, like Chinese dragon, like Western dragon, all that sort of stuff. So they'll be mostly flame-breathing dragons in robot form. That's awesome. So yeah, and Volcano's like she's not humanoid robot either. So she is like a centaur / dragon ogre type character. Nice. But in bot form. Yeah. And a combiner. Oh, cool. Yeah. So that's pretty much all I've got, really. Blue Speedsters probably be next year sometime, but I don't have any plans for apart from immolators, any new factions.
Yeah.
Really, that's pretty much it. But yeah, we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But who knows? A stunning idea may arrive that I can't give up, you know, and I'll have to make a faction on it.
Right? Yeah. Sometimes you just gotta. But the community and everything is surprising on this. Like, I guess not necessarily the size, but like how passionate people are. Like everyone seems to be like dug in pretty hard on that. Was that driven mostly by you, or was that kind of just a thing that happened with the game? Like this community built up around it, or, you know, were you surprised as much?
Yeah, I am surprised in one, like a lot of my thoughts are divided. Like, I'm just trying to think, like, I wouldn't call myself very good socially. So I am surprised at that there is a community. And sometimes I'm surprised that I have a community at all for it. And then other times I'm surprised it's not larger. So it depends what I'm feeling on the day.
Yeah.
How that works. But I can honestly say that I am forever grateful to everybody in the community for their support. Like it's still one of those things where I can't quite believe that anyone plays my game. Do you know what I mean? Like that's sort of weird. It's like to think, oh, you mean they're stocking my game? Like, you know, you need people around the world playing my game. Like that to me it literally blows me away. I don't think there's a single day that doesn't go by where I just think, wow, like how is that even possible? So there's that aspect. And then there's other days, well, not even other days, I still think that, but like then there is times it's like, well, I just need to get more people playing. And it's like, so I oscillate between those two feelings a lot.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's quite exhausting. But so many people have been so fantastic to me in the community. Like I don't have enough. I don't even have enough to ever repay some of these people. You know, just going from times when I've been like really low, like you know, when I got made redundant from my job back in April 2020, my main job, just people giving me support. Like people I don't even know. It's like, to me, that's so fantastic. And I'm very much an advocate of like trying to, I don't know when this sort of started, but probably about at the same time when all the crazy in the world started. So, you know, probably like, I don't know, like mid-2000s or something.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm always an advocate of like trying to build others up. And it actually does make such a massive difference, because it might, having your own games company and stuff like that might seem like fun and all that, but there's this much fun and this much pain in the ass.
Yeah.
You know? So like having people just to like, just kind, well-meaning and good-hearted people in that section makes massive difference.
It's amazing what one word of kindness can do.
That's right. You just don't know. You just don't know what you might think a single word of kindness, it just bounces off, but it actually does. You know, I know in my thing it actually doesn't. Like you could be saying that kind thing at the exact right time to help that person like massively.
Mm-hmm.
And I've had that, like a person said something really kind to me at a time when I was absolutely at my lowest, and it actually made all the difference to my whole attitude. And I'll be forever grateful to that person for that time. But they probably thought it was nothing, right? Like they probably thought it was like they were doing nothing, but it doesn't. So you just never know. You just never know how those things can affect people. So I always try to always try to be that, model that myself. Although I'm not very good at it. I try to.
Yeah. Hey, trying can be a lot. So.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, just having it in mind that you just never know where people are at, and so it's always good to just like a kind word here and there can actually make all the difference.
Yeah, for sure. But you were saying, so this is not your only job. This has not gotten to the point where it's paying all the bills and, you're, popping champagne.
No. In fact, I don't really make any money from Traders Galaxy at all myself. So I have a job that I work half the week, and then I do Traders Galaxy half the week.
That's love.
Yeah, that's right. Like, it doesn't really, like, I'm not raking in dollars. My last tax return was a lot. I think all my tax returns have been losses. So, it's just what you got to do when you're an entrepreneur and you start. Mm-hmm. It's normal. I'm not saying that's abnormal in any way. I think that's normal for a startup, that you just have to keep plodding along. And I'm not any sort of big business guru at all. And most of it is just feeling my way in the dark. That's a rake. Better not stand on that again.
Right, yeah. If it's any consolation, it looks successful from the outside looking in.
Thanks. Fake it till you make it, eh?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, so it's, what is it? That famous Blackadder quote, my life is strewn with cow pads from the Devil's Own Satanic Herd or something like that. Yeah. It's I think I've made every single mistake in the history of business mistakes ever for Traders Galaxy. It's in quite a short space of time.
You're right.
And some I've repeated like multiple times as well. So everything from manufacturing mistakes to design mistakes to finance mistakes to business mistakes, all of them. I've made everything. So many mistakes, and every time I've kicked myself in the pants for it, but it's like I still keep making mistakes. So it's just one of those things. I think you just have to learn to live with it and move on and do the best you can. But yeah, it's sort of funny. It's so different actually having your own games company to how I thought it would be, and because I think I mentioned I studied this, like the industry, as part of my Master of Business for uni, and it's not even like that.
Yeah.
Like, so I'm like, I thought I'd studied it, and it's actually not really. I don't think you can really study how, like, things that I thought would be easy are actually the hardest things, and things that I thought would be more difficult, you can overcome those. Whether it's just my personality or not, I don't know, but the manufacturing mistakes are easiest to overcome. It's the relationship mistakes and stuff like that with businesses and things like that. They're the hardest ones to work out, especially remotely.
Yeah.
Like doing it from regional Australia, not being in the mecca of gaming in the USA or UK especially is quite a challenge.
Yeah, I feel you on that, because I have I went to uni for video editing and everything, and doing a lot of freelance work. And it really is. It's the stuff they don't teach you in school. It's just like making your connection with these people and then learning their language, and then, the inevitable mistakes that are going to happen. Like, it's just.
Yeah, that's right. And it surprises me how there is a lot of good people, but it surprises me how, even though there's only a few, it's surprising how unforgiving those few people are in an industry like that, because, like, surely you must know from being in the industry what it's actually like, and have such little scope for mistakes or anything like that.
Yeah.
To me, is like, like, how are you still here?
Yeah.
Like, how are you dealing with anybody? It's like that's surprising, but it is what it is. I'm getting more used to it now.
Yeah. Well, I know we've been going for a bit, so just got one or two questions. What's the big goal? What's your hope? Your 10-year plan? Like, do you want this to be wrapping around the world, everybody playing it? Or are you hoping that
nice.
Right? I didn't know if you had that ambition or just like, I want a small, tight group, like, because I know people kind of differ on their ideas of where they want their game to head.
No, I want the games to be played by everybody. I would love for everybody to play the games and enjoy the games. That's probably the number one goal, is to just get as many people. It's probably not even a goal, like say as many people as possible playing, like, because I inject to try a bit of realism in there,
Mm-hmm.
to know that I would love everybody to play it. Like, that to me would be a great goal, but I don't really know how. Like, I have a little bit of pessimism and a little bit of realism injected into those as well. I think initially my goal was to pay my house off. That's
a good goal.
It had nothing to do with like anything. When I first started, just like said to my wife, I was trying to sell it to her, and I said, look, like, if we can just get like an extra $100 a month to pay off our mortgage. But it's gone past there, and I still haven't really made $100.
Yeah.
On any sort of regular basis, which is because I just keep pouring all the sales back into stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So I always find new reasons to grow the business, grow the games, grow the universe. But I definitely, as part of that goal, want 100% unique, recognizable IP. That's and I've been driving towards that now for a couple of years.
Mm-hmm.
So everything I do is like, this has got to be like unique IP. This has got to be unique IP. So I check everything. I try not to tread on any toes when if I can help it.
Yeah. Which I think you're definitely, moving towards that with the visual language of the newer models and everything.
Yeah, that's right. I'm definitely, with each sort of new, new design or new take, I'm trying to move it one step further away, because it's not actually something that it's something I consciously think about. It's almost like quite easy to do because I want to go that way. Like, it's not something I'm forcing myself away from this as such. It's a natural thing. I want to go that way because that's actually where I get the most fun out of doing what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm creating this universe and I'm building this up. And the more money I get, the more is injected into doing those things, because that's where the enjoyment for me is.
Mm-hmm.
In creating that sort of stuff. And I just hope that if I know this sounds maybe egotistical perhaps, but if I enjoy it, I feel that the people that are getting into it, they're getting a genuine thing, like and that if I enjoy it and if they're aligned that way, then they'll enjoy it, and I won't get people that want it to be something else.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No,
I don't.
That's absolutely true, and I don't think that's egotistical at all, because I've always had the philosophy as a content creator, if you're enjoying what you're doing, then other people are going to see the enjoyment that you're putting into it, and even from a transient property, they will enjoy it and maybe not even know why. They'll see, because the joy that you're translating into your product is interesting to you, so other people are going to find that interesting.
Yeah, and I think that's my sort of creative goals, is that it's more about me creating something that people can enjoy. That's not and something that's unique that people can enjoy. Adding to what else out there creatively that people can choose to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my goal is in that. Financially, I don't really know what the goal is really, because I don't really think. I've never thought of like Traders Galaxy as, this is going to be a vehicle to make loads of money.
You just want that extra $100 a month.
Yeah. Yeah. So I've never thought, and if anything, having now, that's when it initially was, but now having done Traders Galaxy for 4 years, I now know it's not a vehicle.
Yeah.
Like, millions of dollars. So even if I had that little thought, it's been kiboshed long ago.
Yeah.
But it's still good that it's self-sustaining. Like I don't have like big loans or anything like that for it. I've never had that. Everything is just driven by sales. So as long as people keep enjoying it, keep purchasing stuff will keep getting be done.
And that's its own merit right there, is that it's a self-sustaining entity, which is an achievement.
Yeah. So as long as it sustains itself and you can keep doing cool things, then that's what I'll do.
Nice.
Like, it's not really about it's not about making a lot of money, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But there is other things as well. Like I do have freelance people that do like my art and stuff like that. And those people I'm sure appreciate getting paid on time and all that sort of stuff as well. So, I mean, they do fantastic stuff and I wouldn't trade them if they've now worked with me for nearly 4 years. 2 of them have.
That's awesome.
So they're great guys, awesome guys. And if I ever did sell Traders Galaxy, they would definitely get something, because they're really valuable as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Well, last question, and this is for me personally. Advice for individuals wanting to start up a game. I know. I've learned nothing. But no, I've got a small skirmish game that I've got the rule set for and all this other stuff and everything. What's the one piece of top advice that you would throw my way? Just don't do it.
Oh no, you've got to have a crack, haven't you?
You're right.
I think I don't want to be too cliche about stuff, but I would say that I'm going to just come out with a bunch of cliches, right? And it's like, take the right road, not the easy road.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do the right thing, not the easy thing. Know that it's really difficult, not so much physically, but mentally.
Yeah.
Like, that's the hardest thing. And try to do as much of everything as you can. So even if you can't do it, that's not necessarily a failure. You've learned about it. So when you get someone else to do it, they know if they're BSing you or not.
Yeah.
Okay? So it's like, there's been so many times where, like, I don't know if you know this, but pretty much nearly everything in the business I've done.
Mm-hmm.
So the point of building my own website. Like, I built 2 websites before I got the current one.
The current one is very nice. And also the most impressed I've been from the stories I've heard is you built your own spin cast machine out of a washing machine.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. That was when I first started. I was actually speaking to my wife about this just the other day because I was talking to another YouTube guy who wanted to tell that story, and I'm like, oh, it's not. I was talking to my wife about it. And truth be told, like those early days, I don't even know, like looking back, I don't even know how I got over some of those difficulties.
Yeah.
Like the building the spin caster thing from the wash machine was like a complete. I have this thing in my life that I've used a few times. I've told this story before. When I was little, I used to listen to like this would have been back in the early 80s. So I must have been like 6 or 7 years old, perhaps. I used to listen to Bill Cosby comedy tapes, right? Like he had comedy tapes.
Oh yeah.
I loved Bill Cosby back in those days. You know, the Fat Albert Gang and all that sort of stuff used to be on TV. Absolutely loved his comedy as a kid. And he had one joke, and I don't even know if I remember it correctly, but it's about being trapped in an elevator with a bunch of people, and the elevator like snaps and plummets towards the ground. And at the very last second, he's like going to jump up in the air. And so his whole premise for that was like when the rescuers come, like he knew he would die, right? But when the rescuers come, they would see like 12 crumpled up bodies at the bottom and one head through the roof, and they'll think, well, that guy tried, right? That was his whole premise of the joke. As long as the rescuers knew that he tried, like at the last minute to do something about it. Yeah. And it's a sort of interesting philosophy is that sometimes you just, and I use an American analogy, sometimes you just got to throw up a Hail Mary.
Yeah.
Like, because you just never know what's going to happen. And so building the spin casting machine out of a wash machine was a Hail Mary, and it started the whole thing. It's like I, for some reason, came across these internet instructions from some guy, I don't know, it was a YouTube or somewhere else. He had got an old wash machine and built a spin caster out of it. I'm like, oh, it doesn't look too hard. Obviously, when you look at something done in video, it looks easy as pie.
Yeah, I got that.
Well, when you actually come to do it, it's not very easy. So I did put an ad as part of a New Year's resolution. I put an ad in the Facebook buy, swap, and sell locally. Got a leaky wash machine that worked for $5. Went and picked it up, got it home, stripped it down, and then sort of like looked at it, used the drum as the stand and various different pieces, and had to go buy a ball bearing, and then I need some speed controller from an electronics store. I went to buy one thing that was already built, and then they give it to me as a kit. You have to solder on all the things. I'm like, ugh. So I took it back because there was no way I could do that.
Yeah.
I'm not an electric engineer. And I found the exact same one that someone had already built on eBay, and I bought that. And then I had to work out how to wire a wash machine, and I thought I'm going to electrocute myself here, and I definitely wouldn't recommend this to people. Yeah. But yeah, I used a YouTube video to do that, to wire up. It had the same coloured wires, so I was just hoping that they were universal.
Yeah.
So this was a Hail Mary, and when I turned it on, it worked, which was amazing. But then it took, I don't know, the level of mistakes through the process of doing the first mold and things like that was like pretty major. But there are different types of mistakes too. Manufacturing mistakes are different. You're either right or you're wrong. So it's very easy to go, oh, well, I stuffed that up. I need to do that different next time. That's very easy. It's when you get to a point where like marketing mistakes and things like that, it's just like, well, was I right or wrong, or was it the wrong time? Like, there's a lot of other variables.
Yeah, it's a lot more nebulous.
Yeah, it's very difficult to pinpoint. So you're feeling in the dark a lot for things that work, and then some things that might work 1 minute don't work the next minute, and with the same thing, and it's just bizarre. Yeah. But yeah, so I guess the other cliche to the question would be stick with it. If you're really passionate about it, doesn't matter about the money. It's not about business. It's about doing what you love doing and delivering that to other people that also want to experience and come on the journey.
Awesome.
With you. So sorry, that was a long answer.
No, that was awesome. I appreciated that.
Yeah.
So yeah, let's, we've been going for about an hour now. So anything you want to plug, any announcements, anything like that? I mean, I'll put your links down to your webpage and everything below. So just wanted to give you the opportunity if you had anything.
Really, I'm just still looking to, my major thing is just making connections with people who are already in the industry and stuff like that. I'd love to connect with people about getting my models out there and stuff like that. So that's really it.
Okay.
Really, like, otherwise, yeah, I think things okay.
All right, awesome. Well, everybody, thanks for your time. This was a great interview, and everybody will catch you on the next one.